This month's Where Did the Road Go is brought to you by three wonderful people: Allison Cook, Super Inframan, and 36 Dingo. It is also made possible by all of my Patreons, and if you want to become a patron, www.wheredidtheroadgo.com.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Just a quick warning before you start listening to this episode of Where Did the Road Go. We do touch on missing people and talk not graphically about people who have died, including children. So if that's a sensitive issue, you may want to avoid part of this one. Again, nothing graphic, but it is mentioned in as we discuss some of these cases. And here you go. Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And I am here again with Mr. Steve Stockton. How you doing, Steve?
Doing great, Seriah. Thanks for having me back yet again.
And we're going to talk about your third book on missing in state parks. What's the title of it?
National Park Mysteries and Disappearances, Volume 3, the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho.
And this one focuses a lot on missing people, as opposed to the other ones where you have like kind of a variety of stuff going on throughout it.
Yeah, there's still some ghost stories and legends and things in there, but this one is heavier on the missing people, more so than the first one, the Great Smoky Mountains book. And that's just because I grew up in the area. The Smoky Mountains are near and dear to me, and that's why I dedicated a whole book. And then the California book, there probably will be another, at least one, maybe two volumes of that, because there's so much in California. I just picked three places. And then I found the same here by grouping Oregon, Washington, Idaho together. I could, at some point, probably do a separate book on each one of those. Idaho might be a little tough. There's not a lot going on in Idaho. There is some missing people there and some strange stuff, but Oregon's up there, and Washington State is just off the hook. Sandy, my traveling companion, head writer for the channel, we traveled up into Washington State in May and June for about a week at a time. On this last one in June, we covered 20 cities, 73 places, about 1,500 miles in a little over a week. And we went up into Olympic National Park, Olympic National Forest, second trip up to Mount Ranier. We did Mount St. Helens on the way. That video just came out, a little intro and outro that I did on camera. I'm starting to do more on camera now. Seems people aren't afraid of me like I thought they might be. So that's kind of the way it's going. I'm going to be doing more and more on camera, I think, now that I'm comfortable with it.
Cool. So there are some really interesting cases in this book. Help if I pulled my notes up. Some of the times it's when people are found that's interesting. Let's start with the Cowden family murders. This is unusual for a couple of reasons, but I'll let you tell the story and then we can talk about it a bit.
Yeah, so their family went camping in the Siskiyou Mountains near Carberry Creek in a place called Copper, Oregon, over Labor Day weekend. It was the mom and dad and two kids and their dog, Droopy. I love that dog name.
Yes.
And it was a really bizarre scene, though, the way the bodies were discovered. They were found deceased. And prior to the bodies being found, they'd found their vehicle seemingly abandoned, all their stuff still in it. The keys to it were on a picnic table. The lady's purse and everything was still in there untouched. And it took them a while to find the people. The state troopers and people talked about the camp where they were camping. That was spooky, that there was even still milk on the table. Stuff looked like they had literally just stepped away. The Basset Hound was the only one that survived, Droopy. He was scratching at the Copper General Store's front door the next morning, but again, the owners were nowhere to be found. And they peered back after they found these people, they peered back into their lives, and Richard, the husband and father there, had little debt, no late payments, made more than enough money to sustain the family, because they first thought, well, maybe it's a voluntary vanish, that they just decided to take a powder and live off the grid.
Yeah.
But then his wallet, still with cash in, an expensive watch, etc., was left behind. So it obviously wasn't a robbery or anything like that. And then 7 months after they vanished, 2 gold prospectors were hiking through the woods near Carberry Creek. This was back in the 70s, April 12th, 1975. And around 7 miles from where they camped, the miners discovered the decomposing body of an adult male tied to a tree on a steep hillside. That was the father. And a child, an infant, and an adult female were found dead in a small cave nearby. That was the mom and the 2 children. The cave entrance was carefully covered with rocks so the bodies could be hidden and disguised. And, of course, they had to be identified through their dental records.
Yeah.
And according to the autopsy, both the mom and the 5-year-old were killed by a gunshot. And the little girl, the infant, she had suffered severe head trauma.
Man.
So, again, just weird circumstances. It wasn't a robbery. It's kind of smacks of, I don't know, maybe something ritualistic or some sort of thrill killing or.
And didn't they say they didn't know how the father died?
Yeah, he was just tied to a tree and was dead. I don't think they had I have to go back and look at my notes here.
Because I know they said one of the theories they had is that the father killed the family, and I'm thinking, why would he tie himself to a tree?
Yeah, that was one of the theories at first, that it was a murder-suicide type thing, but they could find no weapon or gun that he could have used to do it. So, again, it's a mystery. And then in the same area, there was another family that had been swimming in that same Carberry Creek that had been abducted at gunpoint by a stranger.
The other thing that I found interesting is that cave was searched.
Yeah, someone in Grants Pass who had volunteered in the search told police that he had searched that cave where the children's bodies were found in September of 74. And then they were found there later in April, I think, of 75. So, yeah, somebody had those bodies somewhere different and then transferred them to the cave and kind of hid them there. So, a lot of these, there's almost a supernatural element. This one I think it's beyond supernatural. I think it was a human predator of some sort, but just strange circumstances, and for them not to take anything so that it at least looked like a robbery or something. I think that's what was most confusing.
Yeah, and the fact that there didn't seem to be any sign of struggle or anything else, like they just got up and left.
Mm-hmm. Just went along, or kind of Stockholm syndrome there, go along to get along or whatever, and then that was the end of them. So,
yeah, and that they've never had any further leads or anything on that, have they?
No, it's unsolved and considered active but cold. I mean, if they have anything come in, they would still check it out, but.
Didn't you mention there was a serial killer that may have been involved?
Yeah, there was a serial killer. The murders were possibly linked to Dwain Lee Little, but he was never charged for it. He was released from the Oregon State Penitentiary in Salem on May 24th, 1974, 3 months before the Cowdens vanished. And he was doing that time for the rape and murder of a 15-year-old girl from 1964. And apparently they did determine that he had been in Copper Creek over that Labor Day weekend, and that he would have had to have been there or nearby there when the family was killed, but there just wasn't enough evidence, circumstantial or otherwise, to tie him to it. No forensics. Although I wonder, if they went back now and did some DNA and stuff on there, if they might find out something different. That's one of the amazing things to me, that a lot of these old cases that are considered cold, they've been solving them through the advances in DNA science.
Yeah. And wasn't there a truck that was seen sitting in that campground or something?
Yeah, there was a vehicle there, I think sitting like either in front of or behind the Cowden's vehicle for a short time, that people remembered seeing it. They went by there. So I think Little is probably the culprit, but again, that's just speculation with what we have to go on now.
Yeah, and it also doesn't tell us, like, it doesn't tell us why he did it, and how, you know, like, where did he take them after abducting them if he did it? You know, like, they weren't in the cave.
Yeah,
so
where did he keep the bodies for, you know, half a year or whatever it was there before stashing them in the cave?
Yeah.
And I'd have to go back and look, but I'm not sure if they could even tell how long they'd been deceased. So he may have kept them alive for a time before murdering them and stashing them in the cave. So that's frightening to think about.
Man. So let's talk about Eric Lewis.
Eric Lewis, found in Mount Ranier, or disappeared anyway, in Mount Ranier National Park. 57-year-old Washington resident. He went missing while mountain climbing on Mount Ranier. This is a really, really strange one. Climbing companions, he was at the end of the rope, and they pulled up the rope and found it had a coil with a butterfly knot that he had unclipped from the rope and just simply disappeared. His body remains missing now, even years after the fact. There's speculation as to whether he was spooked or killed by someone or something, or maybe his gear had failed, but they never found him. He didn't pass them. They went to the summit and he wasn't there. That was the first thought, that he had gone around them and like as a prank and was waiting on top. But you know, if you unclip from your rope, I don't think you're going to be doing much climbing beyond that, unless he had another rig with him. And
his gear was found too, right at the bottom of the.
Yeah, they found the gear, but nothing of him. No body, no remains, no place that they could see that he may have gone. They did find an ice cave. I think it's about 200 feet or so below where the last time they saw him, but there was nothing in there, no sign that any person had been in there.
That's a really weird one, because I mean they I'm assuming they canvassed the area. He should have been right there.
Yeah, and there was the ground being covered in snow and stuff. It should have been easy to find his footprints, but there wasn't any besides those of his companions. So that's just, I don't know. Like I said, no remains being located, and no idea what could have prompted him to cut himself from the rope. Now, I think maybe they did say that he had maybe sheltered in the ice cave briefly, but there's not even sure on that he may have committed suicide or cut the rope himself. And then there's also speculation that his companions did away with him and just made up the story to, you know, he was on the end of the rope, then he wasn't, we don't know where he went, right. And then he could be somewhere else altogether. And that, you know, that does sound kind of far-fetched, but then the fact that after a certain point there was only the companion's footsteps and none from him in the snow.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't rule that out. You don't generally think that way.
Mm-hmm.
So these things sometimes seem really mysterious until you consider the human element, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that can be it really. I mean, it could have been a pact. He could have found out he was dying of some rare form of cancer and, you know, take me to the mountain and throw me off, or take me to the mountain and cut my rope and let me be forever entombed in some place that I enjoy going. But that whole area up there, been to Mount Rainier twice, was up there in May and then again in June last month. And it has a feeling. It was particularly eerie, especially when we were up there in May. It was really cold. It was snowing above, about 5,000 feet or so, spitting snow. There's still a lot of snow on the ground, and a lot of beautiful waterfalls up there where it was melting at some of those elevations. But we go for miles in the park sometimes and not see another soul. And it was, even in the daytime, it was foggy and misty, and there's just kind of a sense of dread there. And Mount Rainier is one of those where historically a lot of people have gone missing from there, either, you know, through misadventure or being ill-prepared or some other thing, maybe either something nefarious or something with a supernatural edge to it. It's that kind of place. It's not as creepy as, say, Mount Shasta in California, but right. There's definitely, if you're sensitive to things like that, you can feel almost like an oppressive feeling there is the way I would describe it.
It's also along a fault line, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So again, consider that fault lines kind of, I think they work similar to ley lines and stuff. I think there's energies that follow along those lines.
Yeah. Is that the one that's also a volcano?
I'm not sure if Ranier is,
Okay.
I think all those are considered dormant volcanoes, but let me take a look here. I should know.
I thought there was one that you said was more of a active type of situation, but I couldn't remember if it was Ranier or not.
Yeah, Mount Ranier is an episodically active composite volcano, also called a stratovolcano.
Okay.
So the last eruption was in 1894, but probably safe. But that's, the longer you go out, the closer you are to the next one. Is one way of looking at that. But
right,
it's nice up there in the Cascade Ranges, and it's one of those things like when you're traveling, say around Yakima in that area, you just kind of come around a curve in the road, and there it is. It's very majestic. Shasta's the same way. When you're going down the I-5, I was headed from Portland to San Francisco to speak at a UFO conference, and there was one area there where we came around bend in the interstate, and then just there's Mount Shasta, and it's just so majestic and so beautiful and just so surprising. But Shasta's got a totally different feel to it. We stayed in McLeod, which is just a little town at the foot of Mount Shasta, not in Mount Shasta City proper there. And I'd be outside. We'd rented a cabin up there, couldn't smoke in the cabin, so I'd go out to smoke a cigarette, and I feel like somebody was watching me. And I, keep getting this feeling. And all of a sudden I'd turn around and look real fast, and the only thing behind me was the mountain. It's like the mountain was watching me. And but if you're familiar with Mount Shasta, I know that's a different episode, but there's a lot of strange things up there. It's all kinds of New Agers and Middle Earthers and people that follow the Lemurians, and a lot of strange Bigfoot encounters up there too.
Yeah, we covered a lot of that in the last one.
Yeah, I thought so. So that's one of my favorite places to go. But Mount Rainier is up there. I love Ranier. Like I said, I've been there twice in the past 2 months, in May and June. So
nice. So let's talk about Samantha Sayers.
Well, that's another unusual. I mean, these are all unusual to some degree.
Right, yeah. Everything in the book is to a degree. These are the ones that stood out for one reason or another.
Nothing in here. It's just like, this is just a normal occasion here, normal occurrence. She was doing a solo hike on the Vesper Peak Trail in the North Cascades. 28 years old. She went missing on August 1st, 2018. Left on the trail around 8 a.m., was due to report to her boyfriend, Kevin, around 6 p.m. that evening. Kevin was at work that night, so he was unable to accompany her. But when she didn't return, he decided to go to the trail around 8 p.m. when it was starting to get dark and look for her. And having no success or anything, he reported her missing around 1 a.m. And as of the time that I wrote the book, there had been no sign of her. And that particular, the Vesper Peak Trail, that's the Washington Trails Association said that's not for novice hikers, but for those looking to go beyond hiking into more backcountry adventuring and stuff. And it's one of those summits where on the way up to it, a misstep or stumble can result in terrible consequences. According to some hikers, the trail's hard to follow. So they think she may have strayed straight from the trail by accident. And when she went missing, wearing gray hiking pants and a black sports bra. And interesting fact about her, factoid, she had alopecia, so she had no hair on her head. So she would be easy to spot, you would think, if you saw a bald woman in a sports bra on the trail. That would be easy to remember. They found her car in Mount Baker, Snoqualmie National Forest, 27 miles south of Darrington. Searched by 70 searchers, 14 dog teams, and 2 helicopters. No success.
And it said she had dinner, or she had met with someone. Was that what it was? An unidentified male before she disappeared?
Yeah, she'd had dinner with somebody that she met on the trail. One of the other things that I thought was kind of unusual, the people that were searching for left bags containing dry socks, ponchos, energy bars, compass, flashlight, fire sticks, and lighters with notes reading, "Stay strong, we're looking for you." Now, that may just be something that I've never heard of doing. I mean, it makes sense to do that if they come across this. Almost like they were trying to lure her out of the woods, like, "Oh, here's some stuff for you."
Well, she definitely knows she was on the right trail if, she found something like that.
Yeah. Now, there's no evidence regarding, her whereabouts or who is responsible. They think it may have been hypothermia, but again, that doesn't hide a body.
Yeah.
So it's they think she may have just gotten disoriented, and then there's the person that she had dinner with. I don't have a lot of details on that other than a man named according to Kevin Dates, unidentified. She had lunch with an unidentified male before she disappeared, according to her boyfriend, and this person, who's yet to be named, after he saw the news that she disappeared, he checked in with searchers to say that he'd had lunch with her at Vespers Peak at around roughly 3 p.m. the day she went missing, and claims that he saw her going down the west side of the mountain toward Spada Lake.
Okay.
So yeah, they really put in the hours, 357 hours of air operations, 105 hours of drone operations, and 82 hours in the Marine unit to search Spada Lake, and then an additional 329 hours of boots on the ground. And called off the search August 23rd, 2018, and no sign of her.
Damn. And they do have a GoFundMe page for that one.
Yeah, the GoFundMe page, as of the writing of the book, they'd raised $39,000, and that was the family wanted to continue conducting a search with private helicopters, dog teams, and a professional tracker. And that happens in a lot of these cases where the authorities just give up. And, I can understand it comes to a point where you're just like, we're not making any progress.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to be the one to make that call. But in a lot of times, in a lot of circumstances, the family will continue the search by private means like that. And that's one of the things we do on the channel. Anytime there's a GoFundMe, we'll donate, whether it's just to print flyers to help spread the word, or in a case like this, to continue searching. And we do it anonymously. We like to be benevolent, but we're not doing it to call attention to ourselves or anything like that. And I feel kind of weird even talking about it now, but it's a good thing. If you do see a GoFundMe for somebody that's gone missing, that their family set up, it's usually a good cause.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next one I wanted to talk with you about is the James Thomas Griffin one. And this was the guy that's the disappearance is weird, but where he's found is what's really strange about this one.
Yeah, he was in Olympic National Park. Visited that on this last trip too. That's an amazing place. Again, there's tales of creepy stuff going in there, and in the adjoining Olympic National Forest, there's tales of occult activity there. Ted Gunderson, ex-FBI agent, wrote a piece on that back in sometime in the 90s, maybe early 2000s, about alleged occult activity there, and he claims that there's all kinds of bodies buried in the forest there that were victims of ritual killings and stuff. So I don't know, but it would be the place to do it, because once you get back in there, it's deep wilderness, huge old growth trees, and miles and miles of nothing except for nature. But yeah, he went missing on December 23rd, or that's when he was last seen, around 4 p.m. on December 22nd at Olympic Hot Springs. And then he failed to attend a Christmas Eve dinner with friends planned on the 24th, and that's when he was reported missing. There was no sign of him on Christmas Day, even though his backpack had turned up. And then about a month later, January 25th, 2015, his body was found near the top of the trail, almost 1,000 vertical feet above the ground. Now, how does that even happen?
Yeah.
That's he was retired, single, just living alone, frequent visitor to the park, knew the trails well and stuff. Even had an old leg injury that sometimes made his progress slow. But for him to be found, that high up, how'd he get up there? I don't think he climbed up there.
Well, I know one of the explanations that you put in there that the police can't said is that, well, sometimes people go uphill when they're lost. That's that's a long distance uphill.
Almost 1,000 vertical feet.
Yeah.
The only thing I could think of was that somehow he had been at a higher location and maybe slid down to where he was 1,000 vertical feet for his last scene. But even that, there would be evidence as such. Park officials stated that he appeared to have stepped off the trail to prepare a snack and then became disoriented and unable to find his way back. Lost his location, couldn't find his backpack, and that was it. And then, that's what they said in response to the question why he climbed the steep hill where his body was discovered. The Olympic National Park spokesperson, Barb Main, said, if it's dark and you can't see anything, it's easier to walk uphill. You're more in control. I don't agree with that statement. Most time when people go missing, they go downhill just because it's easier to go. And most times, too, if you continue going downhill, in a lot of areas, you'll eventually come to water. And then it's coin toss whether you go right or left. But if you can find water, you'll eventually find people.
Yeah, exactly. That one's definitely on the weird side of things. Because even if someone attacked him, why would they then take him up, Yeah,
but again, with the leg problem and being an older person and stuff, I can't see him making that steep of a climb for no reason. Or, it's conjectured that maybe he thought if he got up there, he could see the stars, or he could see the lights somewhere and sort of guide himself to somewhere by that. But it still wouldn't lead him back to his backpack and his food and stuff. His brother, Robert, said the results were just really odd and said it's just one of those things that happened and nobody will ever know what the reasons were for him going uphill. And I agree, but it makes you wonder what would scared him enough or worry him enough to cause him to drop his backpack and food and apparently flee as fast as he could up a steep slope in pitch darkness with an old leg injury, and left his car in an area that he was familiar with as well. So I think he saw something or ran into something, or definitely something spooked him.
Or he got very, very disoriented.
Yeah, that's a possibility too, especially if he was dehydrated and fatigued, and sleep deprived, anything like that. That can certainly affect your consciousness.
I mean, there's also the panic in the woods phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he just panicked and went, scurrying up the trail for a while without even realizing what was happening to him.
We've covered some cases like that where maybe a person was hiking along with a group or maybe just a pair and just runs off into the forest and is never seen again. And that's not only in the forest. There's footage of a guy that disappeared from an airport, and they had CCTV of him wandering around the airport. All of a sudden, he just bolts out the doors. Kept running and was never seen again.
Really?
So, what on earth? I mean, I could understand, some sort of mania or something like that, or a disassociation, but it's still a strange thing. It's not a common occurrence, certainly.
No, but the fact that if it happens more than once, it's definitely something. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's not even in the woods. That's like why. And how do you not find someone at that point? I mean, it's an airport. It's not the middle of the wilderness where they can, disappear off a cliff or, into water or something.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of the other details of that one?
He was in Bulgaria vacationing at the Golden Sands Resort, where he'd supposedly got in some kind of fight and was subsequently unable to fly home with his friends for health reasons. So he stayed behind until he was well enough to fly. I don't know if it sounds kind of like he got beaten up or something like that.
Yeah.
But while alone in Bulgaria, he started acting strangely, called his mother, claiming that people were trying to kill him. And then on the day he was supposed to fly home, he went to the Varna airport to consult with a doctor that they have on site. Was last seen on airport security footage running out of the airport and towards an adjacent forest. Has never been seen since. So, could have been a blow to the head if he had been in a fight or things like that. But so that once outside, he can be seen on the footage jogging away from the airport, climbing a fence, running into a meadow, and sprinting off camera in the direction of a forest near Bulgarian National Highway A2.
So it was a forest. It wasn't a city.
Yeah,
that makes more sense.
At the airport and then just disappeared. But yeah, he did run into the forest. So,
that's Yeah, that's just weird. And I guess, I mean, obviously he was dealing with some sort of paranoia that could have set it off.
Yeah. And I'd say if he'd gotten in a fight, there was no real details on that about the fight or what affected him. There's been his mother, along with the Bulgarian and German doctors, suspected that it may have been a rare side effect from antibiotic that he had been prescribed, which has been known to induce psychotic side effects, including hallucinations and paranoia. But according to the doctor, he hadn't been taking his medication, didn't take the antibiotics, didn't even fill out the rest of the prescription for it. So again, but he left in an absolute panic.
Wow. All right, let's talk about Alexandra Pisc, which was at the North Cascades National Park, and he was painting and then just disappeared.
Yeah, that was a strange one. Now that's one of the national parks up here in the Pacific Northwest that I haven't visited yet. But 35 years old, was last seen on Thursday, October the 8th, near the Colonial Creek Campground and Diablo Lake, which kind of a Fortean thing there. But in a lot of these cases, if there's something nearby that has Diablo or Devil or something like that in the name, there's going to be some stuff that's gone down there, whether it's named that way because of things that have happened, or things happen because it's named that way. It's kind of the chicken or the egg theory there. But any place with a devil name is usually going to have something somewhere in history that's off about it. But he was a Californian from Discovery Bay, and had set up an easel and near his white Toyota Corolla, which is parked along Highway 20. They noticed the Park Service noticed his car, same spot, Saturday, October the 3rd. And then apparently they didn't find out until the 8th that he was missing. Search began for him. A small search, approximately 20 people searched for him and no sign of him. But he was there painting the rugged peaks of the North Cascade Ranges, and said everything was right there, just as if he'd just simply been snatched up.
Yeah.
And now there was, always the people that pop out with the theories about mountain lions, but there was no blood, no torn clothing, no sign of a struggle. And you hear that a lot. It was a big cat. It was a bear. But I've seen photographic evidence of some of those big cat and bear attacks. They're not pretty. They don't just spirit you away.
Yeah.
There's blood. They don't eat your blue jeans or your hiking boots or things like that.
Right.
But this guy completely gone. There was no blood, torn clothing, no sign of a struggle. If it was some sort of foul play, it would have had to have been an abduction or something like that. And the only question I have, I want to know what was on the painting. What, if he painted a creature coming at him or something, that might be a hint. Obviously, not that I'm being facetious there, nothing like that happened or we would have heard about it. But I would like to have seen the unfinished canvas. I can't find a picture of it anywhere. But
and this happened in 2020.
Yeah. And as of when I wrote the book in 2021, no clue, no answers. And then I mentioned in the book that there have been several disappearances in that area, the North Cascades National Park, and in Spanish, Diablo does indeed mean devil, and the area seems to be a center of strange and dark occurrences. And I talked about how places have a devil name for a reason, often dating back to Native American times.
Yes, yeah. So another one from the Olympic National Park was Jacob Gray. And this is weird, and then there's the arrows, which make it really weird.
Yeah, that one, it was like he was leaving some sort of sign for someone, but trying to tell us something. He was in Olympic National Park, pulling a trailer full of camping gear. 22 years old, he lived in Port Townsend, Washington.
And it was with his bicycle.
Was on a bike, towing a little bicycle trailer full of gear. And then he left Port Townsend on April 5th, 2017, and had several places that he wanted to visit there in the national park. But on April 6th, his bike trailer and most of his gear were found about 6.5 miles up the Solduke Hot Springs Road. That's where I'm probably going to butcher this, but the Culet Indians, and it means sparkling water. And strangely, 4 arrows were sticking in the ground and one out of the back of the trailer. and a bow was on the ground as if it had just been nonchalantly tossed there. But Jacob, the owner of the bike and the gear, was nowhere to be found. They checked the area around the bike. They thought maybe it went to the river for some water, and with the idea that at that time the water was freezing and probably would have killed him if he slipped in and couldn't get out. Thought maybe he did hitchhike to hot springs nearby, but it was just puzzling to the Rangers. Other than the bike and trailer being untouched, and the thing about the arrows, it's a mystery, and all those just remains unanswered. He was 5,300 feet above sea level and at least 15 miles away from where he left his bike. When they found his body, mystery of his death still remains unanswered. Found him 5,300 feet above sea level from where he started and at least 15 miles away from where he left his bike, near the top of a ridge above Whole Lake. And I've been up to that lake. It's beautiful up there. But they said the bike and trailer were in excellent condition. Nothing appeared to be damaged. As far as they know, all or most of the equipment was still there. Just no trace of him. They thought certain at first that he had fallen into the river. But then when they found the body, again, how did he get that far away? Did somebody take him? Did somebody abduct him? Why would he leave a perfectly good bicycle in working order and take off for 15 miles?
Yeah.
Just weird. And they had to identify him by his dental records. At the scene where his body was discovered, he had a cigarette lighter, insulated clothing, and plenty of food. His remains showed no signs of trauma, and the official story is that they believe he died of hypothermia. But, if you got a cigarette lighter with you and you're in the woods, I would think you could
light a fire. Yeah,
I've often said that if I ever go missing in the woods, I'm going to start the biggest forest fire anyone's ever seen. They might get me for arson, but I won't end up squirrel food.
Yeah, the arrow thing is weird to me because it almost seems like, was it his bow and arrows, or did somebody attack him?
That's kind of what I was wondering, but it was near Native American reservation, but as far as I know, they don't shoot at people with bows and arrows anymore. I'm being facetious there. But they never really said whether it was his bow and arrows, other than it was found there with one sticking out of the back of the trailer like it had been fired into it, and then 4 stuck in the ground. So maybe it was somebody just messing around with him, was shooting arrows at him as a joke.
Yeah.
And killed him and decided to take the body farther away and farther up the mountain. And
but why not stash the bike and stuff too?
Yeah, unless as a red herring, just leave it there, because that was the area where they immediately started searching, was where his bike was.
Yeah,
and then they came up with the theory that he'd gone in the river. And if his remains hadn't been found, that's probably would still be the official story, was that he slipped into the river and drowned.
Yeah.
So strange circumstances anyway.
So the next one, it doesn't have a bad ending, and that was the one of Giovanna Fuda. And that was at Scenic Creek. And she was only 18, but she was actually found in good health. But I think it's a good example of how easy it is for people to disappear accidentally.
Indeed. Yeah, she was one of the fortunate ones, one of the happy stories. Not all these have a sad and tragic ending, although majority of them do. But people like to hear the survival stories too, people that did go missing and that did make it out. 18 years old, found in good health, had been missing in the wilderness for 9 days. She left her home for a drive east of Skykomish, about 70 miles east of Seattle, and somehow wandered beyond Seattle's views of the city and into a remote part of Washington. She was last seen by her mother that morning, didn't return home or check in with her friends by 11:30 p.m. That were at her parents. She wasn't responding to calls or text messages, so the notified in the morning missing person report was filed. 3 days after she disappeared, Washington State Department transportation worker found her car nearby, and due to the odd placement, the worker noticed it right away. Gina Fuda's license plate number was checked, and it turned out it was her car. Gas had run out in the vehicle, but her belongings and her purse were still in the car. So you'd think if you're going to just get out of your car and take off because you're out of gas, you take your purse with it.
Yeah.
But they at first, the major crimes unit there suspected foul play just because of the stuff that was in the car, and they feared she'd been abducted. And the car was parked where the cell phone had last pinged the tower. And apparently, according to when they found her, search and rescue teams found some of her possessions near Scenic Creek on August 1st. And hope was beginning to fade, she'd be found alive. These included shoes, a Bible, a bag, and her cell phone. She was discovered alive and well moments later. Said she was sitting on a rock near the river up a steep ravine. And the rescuers reported that she had simply panicked when her silver 2008 Toyota Corolla ran out of gas and stopped near Scenic Falls and Stevens Pass. She wandered into the Cascade Mountains with the only items she could carry with her cell phone, Bible, and a journal. Left her purse and her contents behind. Sheriff's office said that a gas station in the area was 10 miles away, so she was cut off some distance through the dense forest to get help. It was too risky to walk along the highway, so she thought if she cut through the forest, she would get there. So again, bad idea or maybe a good idea, poor execution. It's, if you don't know where you're at, I wouldn't recommend taking off through the woods as a shortcut. But she was treated and released. She had some cuts, scratches, and dehydration, but otherwise in good health. She got lucky, though, according to Greg Prothman, one of the rescue team members, that said her survival was facilitated by warm nights and water from the creek. She drank out of a creek there and had eaten some kind of berries, possibly huckleberries, but not too many for fear they were poisonous. So it's one of those things, some people, it's like the lottery. Some people get lucky and some people don't. Anytime you go into the woods for any reason, there's a chance you may never come out, and especially if you're ill-prepared, ill-equipped, and don't really know what you're doing or try to do some sort of hike or activity that's beyond your means and your abilities to do.
So what I find really interesting is that you have these circumstances, like, her purse and her cell phone and all this stuff is left in the car. If we didn't find her, it would look like so many of these really weird cases. For some reason, people do that. And it seems like you wouldn't do that. Like, if I was getting out of my car because it ran out of gas or for whatever reason, I wouldn't leave, my wallet would be in my pocket. My phone would be in my pocket. I wouldn't leave this stuff in the car. But yet so many of these missing people have left really things you wouldn't leave behind, but so did she. And there was no foul play involved. There was nothing weird involved. She just ran out of gas.
Yeah. And panicked.
Yeah.
And then that's another thing, that remaining calm and staying in one place. Did a video recently about people that died along El Camino del Diablo, the Devil's Highway in Arizona. And that's what they tell you there. If you get lost, don't take off out through the desert. Stay with your vehicle. The Border Patrol is regularly through there, and that can be a really grave mistake, is not just staying put. And another thing, when people are in the wilderness, they tend to wander in circles. Yeah. As odd as that sounds, it's something about we humans and the way we operate, that you think you're walking in a straight line, but you're going in circles. It's much better to stay in one place and much easier to be found. But yeah, the things that she left behind, now I don't know what kind of purse it was, but you'd think that the things that she did take with her are shoes, which I'm assuming she was wearing her shoes. Maybe she was carrying an extra pair.
And is this the woman, too, that brought her Bible?
Bible, and I think she did have her cell phone with her in the woods. But it looks to me like those things would have fit in the purse, and you could have just taken everything with you.
Yeah.
But I would not leave, if I carried a purse, say a backpack or a wallet, like you said, I wouldn't leave it in the car, because I would 100% expect for it to be gone when I got back.
And I mean, I would have to assume she was very religious if she thought the Bible was somehow going to help her.
She took the Bible with her. Yeah, I'm wondering if there maybe wasn't, because it talked about the panic and the paranoia and things, maybe, and again, I don't judge anybody, but maybe a little religious mania going on there. There's even speculations that she actually just sort of drove till she ran out of gas and then struck off into the woods to opt herself out, that she, and then decided not to. But it's like I said, when they found her, she was just casually sitting on a rock by the river.
Right.
She wasn't actively trying to be found or get out or anything. Of course, maybe she had finally figured out she needed to stay in one place, but
True.
I don't know. There's something still kind of off about the whole thing. But again, if you're panicked and you're in a situation of paranoia like that, who knows what you would do? It's never happened to me in that regard, but it does happen.
Well, apparently the Bible worked.
Yeah.
She was found, so... So this next one, the guy was also found, but the whole story of this is really fascinating. This was Andrew Devers. And
he's a great guy. I don't know if you've watched that video or not, but
no.
He's kind of a hippie type, and
you could tell from the wording of things.
Yeah, everything was like man and dude and but he was just, he had some strange experiences he encountered. He spent 9 days in the Cascades near North Bend, Washington. Started out just like any other day. He decided to go out and hike. Hopped into his car and took off what he believed to be a relaxing 3-mile hike up the Pratt River Trail. He'd solo hiked this short trail successfully more than a dozen times, so he didn't think anything about it, and didn't really even tell anyone where he was going or when he planned to return. Drove the distance, short ways to get there, but he understands now. He says that how foolhardy this folly was and how it almost cost him his life. He arrived and hit the trail with a water bottle, a thermos of coffee, 2 cans of Mountain Dew, and a couple personal items. Excuse me. Says he hadn't bothered to pack any food for the hike. Instead, he was looking forward to the can of SpaghettiOs that was waiting for him in his vehicle when the hike was over. And he spoke with local news there and said he's such a great guy. I had a notebook with me, and I was expecting to get to the top, read my book for a little bit, write a couple poems, and then come back. But as he hiked merrily along, said he had only been a short distance and suddenly realized that he was inexplicably very lost. And he went on to say, I was following what I thought was the trail, and then I just remembered being off in my own head for about 40 minutes, and then I looked back, and there's no trail. Now, there have been people missing under similar circumstances to that, where they were following the trail and paying attention, and then suddenly realized, I'm not on the trail, I can't see the trail, there's no trail behind me, I'm lost in the woods.
Yeah. I mean, what it sounds like with this guy, he did the same thing a lot of people do driving, where you just kind of go into that almost altered state, and he just kept going. But I mean, there's that Fae-led phenomena where, it seems like you know exactly where you are, and then suddenly you're like, wait, none of this is familiar.
Yeah, what you're talking about there is like the road hypnosis that people get when driving out west, particularly some of those long, straight roads where I remember I was driving somewhere in Texas, headed toward Amarillo's when I moved from Orlando to Las Vegas. And it was just flat, it was dusty, it was hot, and I could see the mountains off in the distance. And I'd drive an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and it doesn't look like the mountains are getting any closer. It's one of those things, it's like everything just looked the same. And it's the distance, in that case, that fools you. And then particularly at night, just the lines on the road. At certain speeds, that the cadence or the repetition of those can cause an altered state.
Well, and also you can just be thinking about other stuff because you're driving so automatically. There have been times where I've had to go, to point A, and I'll drive right past point A. And, 5-10 minutes later, I'm like, I was supposed to go back there. Okay, now I got to turn around because I was just, thinking about something else while I was driving. And I'm just driving automatically and not really thinking about it.
I've had that happen. Then I've had the one where you feel like I've driven too far. I don't know where I am. And then you see something you remember and say, oh, I haven't driven far enough.
Yes.
Even though it seems like you've already. I had that happen to me in Las Vegas once. Both things that you described there. Once I was driving along, just wasn't paying attention. I was thinking deep in thought about something. And I ended up way past where I needed to go, out to the base of the mountains out there on the other side of Las Vegas. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to be here. Had to turn around and go back. And then another time I was coming from the east side of Las Vegas, across the strip, headed west to where I lived. And all of a sudden, I didn't recognize anything. None of the businesses, nothing looked right. And I thought, I've gone too far. Where am I at? But what had got me, instead of the road that I normally took, which was like Tropicana Boulevard or something, I was over on another street. And going the right direction, but things didn't look familiar because I wasn't on the road that I normally traveled. I was a block over. And then I finally saw something I recognized off in the distance. Thought, okay, I'm not lost. I mean, Vegas is laid out like a grid. It's almost impossible to get lost. The strip's in the middle, and then you have east and west, and so, but it's disconcerting, when that happens, and very confusing for just a few minutes when you suddenly don't realize where you are.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I've done that in familiar settings where out here, in upstate New York, there's areas where there's no houses or buildings for a while. There's just, farmland. And so, I'll be driving and suddenly be like, wait, where am I? Did I go too far? Oh no. Okay. All right. It's like, how long did I just zone out for driving?
Yeah. And they'd have like a cornfield. I got lost in a cornfield when I was a kid. And I've got a story in one of my books where a kid got lost in a cornfield, like running around playing in it and stuff, found his way out to the highway, but had no idea which way to go. And in this instance, there was a large black dog that came into the corn and led him out. And he was standing by the side of the road trying to figure out which way to go. And sees a car coming up in the distance. Turns out it's his father and his uncle who were looking for him. And they found him, got him back home, and he was talking about, well, I was really lost. I didn't mean to get that far out in the cornfield and get turned around. He said, but that big dog that was sitting there beside me when you picked me up helped me, led me out. And they're like, what big black dog? We didn't see any dog.
Yeah.
And in the little farming community where it happened, he was just visiting with his parents there, visiting his aunt and uncle. They said, there's nobody around here that has a dog like that. A big, huge, like wolf dog type thing that was black. So there's a lot of stories of black dogs. Usually they're not so friendly, though, and they can be a portent of doom.
Yes.
But in this case, a big, strange black dog led a kid out of cornfield and to the highway and sat with him until somebody picked him up, although apparently the adults couldn't see the dog.
Well, and Andrew has something like that in his story where he hears his girlfriend's voice, and then he finds berries. He was starving.
Yeah. Yeah, he stated that at times he remembers hearing a person's voice calling out to him from across the river. Couldn't see the person, but when he tried to cross, he ended up falling in, was carried downstream. Eventually, he was able to grab hold of a low-hanging tree limb, pull himself out of the water, and it took him to the area where he discovered the berries, which was the first food he had seen in days. He went on to say, I swear I heard my girlfriend's voice, and I looked to the right, and there's like perfect red berries. I follow these berries, and it leads to this personal oasis where I was able to recover, because at that point, my legs and everything were all messed up, but I didn't have any food until then. He called them miracle berries. So they tasted phenomenal. They tasted like life, like I could feel the life going back into my body.
And that, that is, to me, that's the same thing as the black dog.
Mm-hmm.
Different form, but same phenomena.
Yeah, and then he talked about hearing the helicopters.
Yeah.
And he was like screaming, but said no one was listening. He said he felt like a ghost, like I can hear everything, but no one can hear me or see me. But as the days passed, they did indeed find him 9 days. And when he first spotted the helicopter, that one of the ones that would save him, he wrote a poem for the pilot that he could see inside, begging him for help. And then,
and I'm curious, were they using FLIR when they were looking for him?
I'm thinking they were not. It doesn't. The information I had available to me, it didn't say. But he basically made peace with it, and in his journal, he wrote out his wedding vows for his girlfriend and said that he had intended to marry her, and that said day 7 and 8, he was resigned to his fate. It's like, okay, I'm actually dying, and he wanted to be fair to the people that he was leaving behind. He accepted it, but he said the saddest part was nobody was going to be there, and he put all this in his diary. And on the 9th day, he made just a last grasp at survival, spotted a small stream and planned to follow it as far as he could, hopefully thinking he'd spot a trail or another hiker. and said otherwise he knew he'd just lie down beside it and pass away. He said, surprisingly, the idea worked. I ended up randomly just like crawling over a tree and finding like what he described as an acorned path.
Yeah.
It was actually the same trail that he got lost from 9 days prior. And then overjoyed and emotional at finding the trail at long last, he just collapsed and laid there, fell asleep, woke up, and said there was two, according to him, jacked hiker bros who were like, "What's going on, man?" And it was like everything I wanted. It was like waking up to my own Baywatch scene. And oddly enough, even though he'd been out there 9 days, he found only about 2 miles from the trailhead where he'd started. But they got him some help, got him taken care of. He was severely dehydrated. And at first he thought he was imagining people. He said, it was hard to believe someone was actually there until the rescue workers were calling my name. And then I was like, is that my name? That's my name. It's me. It's Andrew. So, but if you get a chance to watch the interview with him, he is quite the character. And just to hear him tell the story, it's a beautiful thing.
And where is that?
That was in North Bend, Washington.
No. Where's the interview?
Oh, it's on YouTube, some of the news channels.
Oh, okay.
I have it up there. You just search for Andrew Devers interview. But he's exactly like he sounds in the
writing there.
In the transcript there, yeah. Just kind of, like I said, a hippie type, poetry and love and flowers. There's nothing wrong with it at all, no shade on that, but it's refreshing, to hear him talk in that vernacular and things, and just to have excitement, to have his life back. He feels like he's been given another chance at life, which he has. 9 days to go missing. I mean, even in warm, good weather, that's a pretty good stretch. All things can happen out there.
And then how, if he wasn't that far from the trail, how is it they couldn't find him? So,
yeah.
This leads to two things. A, it's a lot harder to find people, even when they're close by, when they're out in the thick wilderness like this. But also, like with him saying, like it felt like no one could see him or hear him. Was he offset to things a little bit, and that's why they couldn't find him? And finally, he wasn't again.
That's a curiosity and a possibility. We've covered cases like that where people could actually see the searchers off in the distance, hear them calling for them, and they're like screaming back at them, and seen them pass by sometimes within just a few yards. And but for whatever reason, they couldn't get to them. They couldn't get their attention. They couldn't seem to hear them or see them. Now, again, maybe it's hallucination if you're dehydrated and starving. But I don't know. It makes you think that sometimes there is some sort of little glitch there, some sort of where you can see somewhere where you're not, and maybe vice versa.
Out of sync a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's how you get lost in the first place, because you went out of sync a little bit.
Yeah. And the voice in the woods, that's a common thing. I've heard of it coming just from the forest in general.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes seems to come from caves. And it will, majority of the time, be the voice of someone they recognize, a loved one, usually still alive, but sometimes a loved one that has passed. And I read one particular case where a guy heard his own voice trying to lure him into a cave.
Really?
Calling himself by name. He's like, Charles or whatever. Charles, it's me. It's you. We're you. Come on in the cave. And so he got spooked and got the hell out of there, as would I.
Yeah, no kidding.
If I hear myself calling to me, I don't want to meet my doppelganger. That's an omen of death anyway, so.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, vocalizations from the woods is definitely a paranormal thing that goes throughout history and gets associated with all kinds of stuff from ghosts to Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that in a lot of Bigfoot cases, particularly the cave ones, where either prior to or right after hearing somebody calling to them from a cave, a lot of times it'll be a woman's voice and saying that she needs help. Also heard a case where a guy thought he heard a baby crying in a cave. Now that's, to me, I mean, somebody calling to me would be strange enough, but if I'm passing by a cave and I hear a baby crying, that's a hint and a half for me to go the other way. I'll go tell somebody. I'll go tell the park rangers, hey, I heard a baby in that cave over there.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to go in and look for it. But I've heard of that, of Bigfoot or some type of cryptid that will mimic either a woman screaming or a baby crying. Now, in Tennessee, they have panthers over in Middle Tennessee, over on the Cumberland Plateau, and I've heard from people there that some of those big cats will make a sound like a woman screaming. So, again, I'm not going to check it out. I'll just err on the side of caution. Like I said, I'll call somebody and let them know that I heard a woman screaming, but I'm not going to go check it out in case it is a big cat or a cryptid or something that wants to make me scream.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. All right, so let's talk about Susan Seymour Adams. She disappeared on the Selway Bitterfoot Wilderness, and this is one of those cases where there's no good reason she should have disappeared. She went up to just take some pictures. I think it was pictures of a meadow, if I remember right.
Yeah, her and her husband Tom were camping near Battle Lake in the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness. This is in eastern Idaho. Nearby meadow, she went bird watching, and even though tracks were found, she was never seen again. They've done some touring around out there, just enjoying their time in the wilderness. They arrived in Idaho Falls and headed to Hamilton, Montana, where Art Griffith, owner of an outfitting business, was waiting for them. They rode by horseback to Battle Lake. And during the group's stay at the camp, they were bird watching, hunting, some other activities there. Her husband, Tom, liked to hunt, so he had a hunting guide set out on an overnight trip. And she remained at the base camp and was just not as adventurous as he was. And she told the chef at the base camp on Sunday that she was going to go bird watching in a nearby meadow. And she was wearing camouflage print clothing, which might have made her a little hard to find.
Sure.
She had her camera and binoculars, but that's all she'd left with. Now, her husband returned home from his hunting trip that afternoon, learned that she'd gone bird watching, and didn't really think much about it. Then after she didn't return when evening approached, he didn't feel right and decided to hike in the meadow and look for her. They did indeed find her footprints, led down a dusty trail. He hiked in the direction of the meadow, and before reaching the meadow, her footprints abruptly ended, as if she had suddenly disappeared. In a police report, he wrote, "I followed the footprints to a place about 20 yards from the meadow where the tracks stopped." I mean, they just stopped. She didn't step off the trail,
right?
Or, to use the bathroom or something. It was like she was just walking, and then, as you see in some of these cases, like she just went up. Something took her up.
Well, wasn't there also a report that like one of her tracks was off a little, like she was limping?
The searchers literally walked at arm's length from each other across acres of wilderness during the second search. A track was found leading to the conclusion that the person had been injured. There's a difference in the track and the prints. The left foot has turned out like an injury, possibly a fracture or a sprain of the left lower extremity. Now, a psychic described the area that they needed to search, said, "I feel as if she's within a 3 to 5 mile distance in the direction north to northwest of her campsite." According to the psychic, Susan died from head injuries sustained from falling off a rock cliff.
Well, I mean, since we didn't find her, we don't know if
don't
the psychic
know
was right or not.
Husband was originally considered a suspect, and that's just standard operating procedure. Anytime a spouse goes missing, the one left is automatically the first suspect. But he and the rest of the party members that they were camping with, staying there at the lodge, did pass polygraph tests, although that's not even admissible in court in most places. But it just at least indicated that they weren't telling the truth. But other than that, her remains haven't been located, nor have any other pieces, evidence like her camera or binoculars or her clothing.
Were the limping footprints like the same ones the husband found, or were they found separately?
It was apparently the same ones.
Oh, okay.
And then, like, something happened, and then she continued on limping, and then just suddenly wasn't there anymore. And that could sound like an animal attack or predation or something. An injured person's going to be easy prey, but then why were there no other tracks?
Yeah. For
an animal, a big cat, a bear, another human. Just tracks and then no tracks. And some of the popular theories I talked about here, she became lost or injured and perished. In this wilderness area, it's very likely to become lost or injured. However, a major search of the area was conducted, and despite the fact that she was simply walking to a nearby wet meadow to watch birds, nothing there. It was like she wasn't really hiking at all. The other theory, she met with foul play, was either abducted or murdered or both. Last person known to seen her live at the camp was the chef there at the base camp. And but that would explain, why no clothing where remains are found in the meadow if he had harmed her. Again, Tom, her husband, was said to have possibly killed her. And while she was still watching the birds, and then left her in the meadow. But again, no signs of an attack, no signs of a burial. Now, I don't know if they used heat-seeking infrared or sniffer. I'm sure they used dogs and stuff in there. And that's the third theory that's put forth. She was killed and eaten by a wild animal, something akin to a mountain lion. But again, searchers found no blood, no ripped clothing, no sign of a struggle anywhere.
Yeah.
And then there's a really strange theory that I've been hearing put forth a lot lately in some of these cases where people just suddenly go missing. And it's from, of all things, a biblical perspective. It talks about, I believe it's in Matthew, where people are snatched up. So two will be in the field, one will be taken up and the other left. Women will be grinding at the wheel. One will be taken up and the other left behind. Now, in that reference, it's talking about the rapture, when all the righteous in Christ are raptured up into the heavens. But now I thought about that, and just from a non-theological, non-religious perspective, I'm not a religious person at all, but I am a spiritual person. But what if, just bear with me here, what if the rapture is not a singular event? The Bible talks about God's concept of time being different. That to God, 1,000 years is like a day, and a day is like 1,000 years. What if my time to be raptured is different than your time?
The problem with the rapture is that was come up with in the 1800s.
Yeah.
It's not part of the the Bible. So,
but there's a lot of people that do believe in it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And just looking at it from that perspective, it's just something else out there to ponder. I'm a chronic insomniac. That's the kind of stuff that rolls around in my head at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm not sleeping.
That is a really interesting interpretation. I like it.
Now, it's a head scratcher. When you lay that one on people, they're like, I never thought about that. I posited that to Bill, the other half of Missing Persons Mysteries, the actual founder of the channel. He's like, but that gave me chills. He's like, I never thought about that.
So I think we have time for one more, and this is actually the one that makes me think of the whole Panic in the Woods thing, which was Terrence Woods Jr., and that was by the Penman Mine, and he just takes off.
Yeah, Western Idaho. He was a 27-year-old freelance filmmaker, was part of a production crew recording a reality show there at the Penman Mine, and then just suddenly they say that he jumped off a cliff and dashed into the dense mountain forest as the crew was wrapping up, stunned them all. He literally disappeared before anyone could react. And then around the same time, another one that's in my book, 57 miles to the north, Connie Johnson disappeared under mysterious circumstances from Fog Mountain in Idaho at the same time. But that one, it's just there's no accounting for it. They don't know why he would choose to run, why he would disappear into the forest. That's just one of those, like we talked about earlier. That now there is some conjecture on that one. Some of it's kind of ugly. He was a person of color. All the other crew members were Caucasian, and this was in Idaho, and no shade on Idaho, but there are a lot of white supremacist holdouts there in some area.
Yeah.
So they think that the other members of the crew may have done something to him, possibly a hate crime, and then just made up the story. But I think they found part of his clothing, maybe one of his boots, hanging on a fence or something like that. But according to everybody there, the film crew that witnessed it, he simply jumped off a little bluff there that he was standing on and ran. They were calling for him to come back. They tried searching for him, and he's never been found.
And that sounds like a panic response.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, did he see something from his vantage point? He was up higher than the other people were. Did he see something off in the distance? Was there something up above him that came down after him? That takes me back to my own memory of being in the woods and having something come up out of a ditch that I couldn't see, but that I could see the effects that it was having on the environment. The leaves were being kicked up, trees a lot higher than my head, the limbs are being brushed aside, and I could feel the earth where this thing was heavy enough that it was, I could feel its footfalls, but I couldn't see it. Nothing. There was absolutely nothing there. Happened twice. Once when I was 8, again when I was 15, when I'd gone back to the area wondering, what scared me when I was a little kid? Well, it came back after me. But definitely a panic response, especially when I was 8 years old. I was about a quarter mile away from home. I ran screaming down the hill, crying, making so much noise. My mom heard me from inside the house and came out on the back porch to see what I'd done this time. And I continued on past her and went inside, and I think I hid behind the couch or under the bed or something. I got under the furniture anyway.
Right. So what was the other woman who disappeared at the same time? What was her story?
It was Connie Johnson. Let me pull that one up here. Connie Reed Johnson, Big Fog Mountain. She was 76. She worked as a camp cook for Ritchie Outfitters, so she's based in Salmon, Idaho, in the area around Big Fog Mountain and Big Rock and Grangeville. On October 2nd, 2018, the hunters left the camp, and this is the last time she was ever seen. Sheriff Doug Giddings reported that the hunters were able to radio Connie the next day, but the reception was too weak to understand what she was saying. When they returned to the campsite on October 5th, the hunters found that Connie and Ace, her dog, were missing. She was also a former U.S. Forest Service wilderness ranger at Moose Creek, so she knew what she was doing, even though she was elderly. She, was used to being in the woods and being alone and stuff.
Yeah.
That was one where they did search for FLIR, tracking dogs, and no trace was ever found. Now, they did find the dog 3 weeks later, turned up by himself at the Moose Creek Ranger Station, about half a mile from her camp. And I think in that case, they did find some forensic evidence, some blood, if I believe correctly.
Yeah, and they tried to use the dog to lead them back too, didn't they? And the dog didn't take them to anything. Yeah,
the dog just didn't know what to do. Now, considering your outdoor experience, it's just kind of weird what happened to her there.
Yeah.
She had survival skills which were considered impeccable. Still, she could have fallen ill or been in an accident. But
sure.
Her daughter speculated that I believe she was enjoying the outdoors, which she loves, and something happened, obviously. But she's alluding to the fact there that they think she was taken. And I don't think that is the case where there was any blood found. I'm not seeing that in my notes here.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Yeah, there was a very similar circumstance where an elderly lady who was a cook at a lodge like that was taken, and there was still like food on the stove and things, but there was blood in that regard. But no, she just disappeared, and her and the dog. So it makes you think that she went either willingly or unwillingly, and the dog followed, and then for him to be found that length of time later at ranger station half mile away. But yeah, he couldn't lead him anywhere. It's like, I don't see nothing. I don't know nothing. You get nothing out of me.
All right. Well, you want to continue some of this in the Patreon segment? Maybe we could talk about some of the haunted stuff in your book.
Sure.
Where can people find you in all the different places, Steve?
My main channels, Missing Persons and Mysteries. We just passed 217,000 subscribers over there this morning. Couldn't be more happy and proud of the work that we're doing over there. Just trying to boost the signal on some of these missing person cases. That will always be our main focus. If we can give one family closure or hopefully bring somebody home, then it's all worth it. But the other side of that, the mysteries part of the name, we cover a lot of stuff. Not only some of the strange disappearances, but Fortean and cryptids and occasional ghost stories and stuff. One of our most popular segments is listener stories, where people write in with their experiences. Yeah. And it's wide open. We don't, we take people at their word. I think there's been one or two that I've just tossed out because they were obviously telling stories. One guy sent a story about encountering an elk in the woods, and the elk charged him and flipped him up on its back, and he rode it off into the wilderness. And I'm like, yeah, I don't buy that one. But other than that, been a lot of shadow people, a lot of hat men, UFOs, Bigfoot, things like that. And I love those stories. And also, I'm on 13 Past Midnight. Sandy, who's my head writer on Missing Persons and Mystery, she's my business partner for 13 Past Midnight. So when we're out traveling around, she's not only my head writer, my business partner, she's my chauffeur, bodyguard, nurse, takes care of me and Mulder when we travel. And we go hard. Like I was telling you last month, we did 1,500 miles in Washington State, hit 20 cities and 73 different places. So get the most of it. And we still spent 3 or 4 days at the beach. Nice. Of course, we worked while we were there too. But 13 Past Midnight, that's more the scarier stuff that maybe doesn't fit on Missing Persons and Mysteries. I've recorded some stuff out of my books over there, some ghost stories. Was doing some of the LibriVox recordings of classic ghost story books and things from 100 years ago. Did that for a while. We did 370 nights live every night in a row when just kind of burn out on doing the live stream, so we're taking a hiatus. But we've got some interesting stuff coming up over there. When we were in Aberdeen, Washington, I visited the Kurt Cobain Memorial Park, little makeshift thing under the bridge just up the street from his childhood home or teenage home. And didn't know it at the time, but that's where he would go sit under the bridge and smoke whatever he was smoking and just watch the river flow by. Muddy Banks of the Wishkah, that's where the name of that album came from. And I didn't know it at the time, but I felt like I felt his spirit under there, because he tried to live under there at one point, but it was just too muddy from one of his times running away from home. But what I found out later, when he was deceased, and I don't believe the official story, I think he was murdered, but that's for a different show. When he was, after he was deceased, he was cremated, and by his own request, a third of his ashes were sprinkled under the bridge in the Wishkah River. So, wow. In theory, twice a day when the tide comes in and the river rises under the bridge, he's back under there. And so I felt his spirit. I felt the angst. I felt the anger. I felt there's just a pall that hangs over Aberdeen. I mean, it's a good place, no shade on the people that live there and work there, but it was known as the lumber capital of the world, but now it's like a mill town without the mill. Yeah. The mills started closing down in the 70s and 80s, and they're just, especially in that neighborhood where he lived, I stood on the Young Street Bridge that the park is under and looked out over there, and it's like all these little houses, and again, no shade on anybody or their circumstances, but stuff with junked cars in the yard, rotting piles of rusty things, old men without any shirts on, the type of men that never wear shirts, having their first beers at 10 o'clock in the morning. I can see why you would either want to end it all or get the hell out of Aberdeen. That's what he did. He laid on the railroad tracks intending to end it all, but luckily the train went by on the other siding, and that was his wake-up call to, maybe that's not the way. Maybe I need to get out of here by other means, and it was his music.
Oh, didn't know that.
Sorry, didn't mean to get off into that. That's right. One of the videos I've got coming up over there. It's still in production, but got a lot of footage, and I'm writing a thing to go with it.
All right. And your books, I mean, this is the one we talked about today is National Park Mysteries and Disappearances, Volume 3, The Pacific Northwest. But all your books are available on Amazon and other typical places? Yeah, Amazon, Kindle, and paperback format, and wherever fine books are sold. My publisher likes for me to say that. You can order them. They're listed in Books in Print, so you can go into any bookstore and order them. You can ask your library to get them. I get every now and then a report of one out in the wild. Somebody saw a copy of, I think it was My Strange World, in a Target somewhere in Florida. Nice. So they can show up places since anybody can order them. But I'm waiting on Piggly Wiggly. Once it shows up in a Piggly Wiggly, I've arrived. All right. Thanks for coming on with me, Steve, and we'll continue this in a Patreon segment. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Seriah. I want to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons. Without you, this show wouldn't be possible. And I especially want to shout out to those pledging $10 or more. Allison Cook, Super Inframans, 36 Dingo, Chuck Shutters, Leanne Sherry, CJ, Tim, Andrew Nichols, Christine, a blue 2nd Gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, Alex Whitcomb, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Limina, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, land of the crazy and communicable, Christopher Ernst, Craig Cicernos, Craig Parmenter, Crystal Ann Compton, Diane B., Edu Camahort, Empty K, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, J. Otto Bullitt, James Lattimore, Joanna Rojas, John Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Cool Kitty, Roger Gonzalez, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Linz Jackson K., Luke Osborne, MJ Armstrong, Jim and Sophie, Mark Brady, Matt in Delaware, Patricia W., Paul Jeffries, Ray Benedetto, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupre, Sam Sharon, Stone Wilderness, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Vincent Trewell, Walker, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Stephen D., and Amber Hall. Thank you all so very, very much. As we said, there's a Patreon-only segment with Steve. There's some other Patreon segments that are going to be going up here in the next couple of weeks that are not related specifically to shows. Well, one of them is, one of them isn't. And some other stuff I've just put up recently that I hope people will enjoy. If you want to become a patron, it's only $3 a month, and it helps us out immensely. If you like the show, please consider joining us on Patreon. As well, leaving reviews, sharing the show, giving us 5-star reviews on your favorite podcatcher and such helps immensely as well. I'll see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.